Alright, so today we are testing the Intel Arc A750 in Diablo 4. Now, I waited quite a few months for this GPU. It was just never available in my country. Eventually, I managed to find it online, and now I have it. So we'll be testing at 1080p and 1440p. Today we're pairing this GPU with a 12400F CPU. Everything is on the screen there. We've got 16 gigabytes of a DDR4 3600 MHz CL18 memory from Team Group, and that's paired with an Asus B660 motherboard. I'm also running this on Windows 10 with game mode enabled, and resizable bar is also enabled. Alright, so let's just go over the settings here, and this is one thing about the A750 that really grinds my gears, is that with the 4K capture card from Elgato, at black screens every now and again. If I do plug it into a monitor directly, then there's no issue. Every now and again there would be a black screen when it's just connected to the capture card. Alright, so we are testing at 1080p at the moment, and we are at the Ultra preset. Nothing else has changed. Now you'll see this game does support Intel XeSS, and we'll be testing with it a little bit later. Alright, so let's just go and start our benchmark run here. This is in this exact same spot as I tested the 6600 XT earlier, just to keep the benchmarks a little bit more uniform so you can see the performance differences between the GPUs more or less. The dungeons do change, so the layout is not entirely the same, but it should give you a fairly good idea. Now, I paid $300 for this GPU in my area. I know it's a little bit more expensive than in the US, for example, but it's around $70 cheaper than a 3060 and about the same price new as a 6600 XT. It is a little bit faster than the 6600 XT and also slightly faster than the 3060 in some games. Obviously, if ray tracing is enabled, the 3060 beats it, but this game doesn't support ray tracing, so we won't be testing with that. But so far, the time I've spent with this GPU, it's actually pretty decent. The drivers have come a long way since release. There were quite a few driver issues when it just released, and most of them have been fixed. Well, maybe not even most of them, but a lot of them have been fixed, and that is good to see. It gives me a little bit of hope, not for me surviving. Now we have to reset our numbers here. Alright, as I said in my previous video, it is sometimes a little bit distracting trying to talk and play at the same time. That's my excuse anyway. Alright, let's see if we can actually kill this guy now without dying. My previous benchmark run was actually also run on World Tier 1, which is an easier difficulty level. I didn't even notice that. I usually just play on this this difficulty level. And let's see if we can actually get this guy down. He is pretty tough. I am also now level 30. I think I was level 27 in the previous video. Let's see if you actually do concentrate, it's a little bit easier. Alright, so we are actually seeing pretty good performance here. We are staying above 100 frames per second at all times here, which is pretty good. Our VRAM usage is sitting at around 3 gigabytes. See, as I'm watching the VRAM usage, I get distracted and then I almost die. That guy hits quite hard. Alright, he's down. I actually just dodged a little bit later than I should have, but I'm not used to dodging. I've played Diablo 2 for quite a few years, and you never had dodge in there, so this is a dodge is slightly new to me. Anyway, so you can see our performance is pretty good. I mean, getting 100 frames per second at 1080p Ultra. It's not that much higher than the 6600 XT we tested earlier, but I did see that in these outside areas, the 6600 XT would drop into the 80s, whereas this GPU stays in the hundreds more or less. And inside you can see we're getting almost 140 frames per second, which once again it's pretty good. But then again, the Intel GPUs, they seem to fare pretty well with newer APIs, Vulkan or DirectX 12. DirectX 11 and DirectX 9 seem to be their Achilles heel, and they've been trying to fix that, and slowly but surely they are getting there. But all is not yet perfect. But then again, you have to remember they are very new in the DGPU space. Sure, they had a lot of iGPUs, but it's not the same thing. And Nvidia and AMD have got quite a jump start on them when it comes to the drivers. So all in all, this is actually pretty decent. Don't get me wrong, I'm really not recommending this GPU, especially seeing that it costs exactly the same, well, in my region anyway, as a 6600 XT. I personally think that that is still the better buy at the moment. I just bought this GPU for the channel to benchmark, and because it's a really good looking GPU. This is the Intel limited edition one, so it's well, you can call it a founder's edition. Alright, so that's going to be it at 1080p Ultra. We had an average of 111 frames per second. Our 1% lows are sitting at 91 and our 0.1% lows are sitting at 77. Alright, let's just see what happens at high, and then we'll move on to 1440p. Alright, we're still at 1080p. Let me just get rid of that. And on the high preset, everything is pretty much there. Still no XeSS. We aren't going to enable XeSS at 1080p because it's really not necessary. I mean, look at that. We're getting 140 frames per second. So no upscaling needed whatsoever. Also, one thing that I do have to get used to is the mana pools. I mean, I can cast 3 spells and then my mana is empty. Surely that'll change once I actually get better gear. But for now, it's a little bit of a struggle. Once again, used to Diablo 2 Resurrected, you just get a lot of mana if you actually spend skill points in it and get gear that help you with that. In this game, sure, you do get gear that help you with mana as well, but I don't have any as of yet, and I'm not sure. I actually killed the one guy, so I have to go the other way. But yeah, you can see we are getting around 130 frames per second on average, which I think is pretty good. This game runs very well. I mean, it's definitely well optimized. The betas were full of stutters, but this game, the release version, is actually very decent. Also, this game reminds me a lot more about Diablo 1 and 2 than it does Diablo 3. Sure, the text on screen, etc. is reminiscent of Diablo 3, but the story is a little bit more dark, and the music definitely is a lot more serious. The atmosphere seems a lot more dark as well, which is good to see that they returned to their roots of Diablo 1 and 2. Alright, so that's it for 1080p. Hi, let's move on to 1440p, and we'll set it back to ultra and see what happens. Now, one thing, you can't actually change the resolution in game. You have to change your desktop resolution or use another utility to change your resolution from outside the game. So I just changed my desktop resolution. It's on 1440p at the moment. Let's just put this back onto high, and let's see what happens. We still don't have any XeSS enabled, and resolution percentage is still at 100%. Right, and there's the black screen again. It'll be back just now. Alright, and we're back, and that one took around almost a minute to restore. So if you are in a fight, you will definitely die. I mean, I've got it connected to 2 screens at the moment, to my capture card and then to my main monitor, so I can actually just see when it's blue screens or black screens actually, and it doesn't do that on the main monitor. It only does it to the monitor connected to the capture card. I tried everything. I tried changing all the settings within the capture card. I tried updating the drivers once again, DDU, everything. It just doesn't seem to work that well. I'm not sure if it's an Intel issue or if maybe the Elgato capture card just does not really support the input from Arc GPUs just yet. I'm not sure what would be different. The supported color space might be different. I don't know. I'm almost died there. And I mean, I did try everything from pure RGB, etc., and still I'm having this issue. But it looks like now it's actually a lot less once we are actually in the game and the resolution changes have taken effect. Then the black screens seem to be a little bit less. But you can see we're getting around 80 frames per second here on 1440p Ultra actually, our VRAM usage is sitting at 3.5 gig. That should creep up to around 5 gig I've seen with the 6600 XT, but still well within the limits of this GPU. And that guy doesn't seem to actually take a lot of damage from my ultimate, which is concerning because that's my most damaging spell. And now he spawned this much more difficult guy, the Watcher lead or Watchman lead. It's not really easy on build tier 2 if you don't have decent gear, but I mean, I really enjoy this. I really enjoy a challenge. I don't luckily, I mean, I don't have a hardcore character, but otherwise I would have restarted this game plenty of times. But it is definitely a lot more difficult than Diablo 3. I know I keep on talking about Diablo 3, but that's the predecessor to this game actually, if you don't take the Diablo 2 remaster into consideration, which you shouldn't. Well, we should be good now. Alright, there we go. Alright, so that was at 1440p Ultra. We had an average of almost 80 frames per second, 79 there, and our 0.1% and our 1% lows are pretty respectable as well, indicating that there's a very little stuttering going on. Alright, let's just drop this down to high and see what happens. Alright, we're now on the high preset, still at 1440p, no XeSS enabled yet. Now, one thing that's pretty strange about this game is it only allows the upscaling technology from the vendor of the GPU that's in your system. For instance, I can't enable FSR, even though this GPU supports FSR. On the NVIDIA GPUs, it supports XeSS and FSR, but you can only use DLSS, which is pretty strange. I would have liked there to be more options so you can have a more accurate comparison between the two. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to click Save Changes and then I'll be back in another minute. Actually, it did not black screen this time. Alright, so we gained around 20 frames per second here just by going down to high. Now, I did an image quality comparison earlier just by myself. I'm no expert when it comes to image quality, but there's really not that big a difference between high and ultra. Sure, some of the bushes and foliage and grass, etc., looks a little bit better on ultra. Other than that, the textures inside, everything, it looks pretty similar, right? So I'd play this game on the high preset if I had one of these GPUs, an 8GB GPU or a mid-range GPU. The VRAM doesn't really matter. As you can see, we are really not running out of VRAM here. So if you do want a little bit of a higher frame rate and you've got something like a 3060 or a 6600 XT or an A750, then the high preset is definitely still very good looking. I must say this Frost Sorceress is actually pretty potent. It's just that I do rely quite a lot on my Frost Nova spell to do a lot of damage because my Blizzard is doing quite a lot of damage to frozen enemies. Without it, it's not as potent. So I do play a little bit slower than I would have with Lightning, but it's still a very fun build. So what I usually do is I just try and attract as many enemies as I can, then I Frost Nova and I cast my Blizzard, and then all enemies pretty much die. It's actually a very strong move. Alright, so he just died. Alright, so whilst we're at 1440p high, let's enable XeSS and see what happens. Right, so for XeSS, we've got ultra quality, quality balanced, and performance. So we'll just go with ultra quality. Let's see if it actually increases the frame rate quite a bit. I think we were sitting at around, what was it, around 100 frames per second here. And we gained another 20% in the frame rate. Now, XeSS is also AI based. The Arc GPUs also have tensor cores to help with the AI upscaling, which is pretty good. It's more or less the same way that NVIDIA does it. FSR works more on a software level, or it only works on a software level. But the advantage of FSR is then that you can actually use it on all GPUs. It's not hardware dependent. Sure, you can also enable XeSS on not only Intel GPUs, but other GPUs as well. It's just in some games, Intel GPUs actually fare quite a lot better when XeSS is enabled compared to when other vendors use XeSS. That makes sense because obviously they are the developers of the tech, and it'll make sense that it actually does run a little bit better on their own hardware, seeing that they actually do have dedicated tensor cores for that as well. Alright, so I'm just going to kill these two. There we go, they're dead. And then we're going to call it a day. I just wanted to test the A750 in Diablo, and I must say I'm quite pleasantly surprised. It does fairly well. It does a little bit better than the 6600 XT, except for the black screens, but then again, it only happens on the capture card and not on the main monitor itself. So there you have it. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and as always, we hope to see you in the next one.